welcome once again, everyone. It's finally the final week of the Beacon World League. We're out of the league phase, we're entering the postseason. That means one thing, it's Promo-Relegation time and it's playoff time. And we're going to be talking about Promo-Relegation today because today my special guest is none other than the Damascus Gaming player Nixotica, who is going to be defending his place in Div 1 this season. Nix, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So my first question, just to get a bit of background, I know that you've been competing in the game for many years now. So where has your love for the game come from, and more specifically, competing in Trackmania?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just kind of naturally fell into place. If you play a game as a kid, you tend to enjoy it, and then this game has just stuck around, and had an esports scene for so long. I feel like it's just been such a natural thing for me to keep playing it. I think once I started noticing that I was at least okay at the game, I decided why not just play more competitions. I started doing competitions, I think as early as 2013, more casual competitions when I was a lot younger, and then it just sort of naturally escalates from there, I think, once you get involved in a community like that.
Yeah, and I was doing a little bit of research before this interview, and looking at your Wikipedia page, it's quite obvious to see that you're very much drawn to those, I might say, bigger events, the sort of the official ones and the ones with the most prestige. So looking specifically at the Beacon World League, what actually drew you to this event and why did you decide to sign up?
Yeah, I think last season I was a lot more skeptical. Seeing other competitions kind of just pop up and then die off a little bit, and thinking that it was going to be just kind of like the rest of those. And then I think once I saw the first season, it really raised my confidence that it actually was the best competition that there is in the game right now. I think especially with the current state of the World Tour, I think that also influenced my decision a lot. I think this is a good way to stay fresh for me and also get a good opportunity to really challenge myself on difficult maps and just really bring back, I think, the same kind of vibe that the game brought so many years ago, back in TM2 with high level competition that was really community focused.
Obviously, talking about World Tour, you've participated in it specifically last year when it was in that duos format with your duo at the time, who was Neil, from Damascus Gaming as well. And Neil took part in Season 1. He wasn't able to defend his position in Div 1. You're going to be trying to do that this weekend. But I want to know, coming into seeding for Season 2, was qualifying to Div 1, was that the ultimate goal? Were you expecting that to happen, or did that come actually as a bit of a surprise?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially my goal was just to get top of Div 2 and just enjoy myself playing the league. I was really surprised the day that I got Div 1, and especially not just scraping in, but pretty confidently getting into Div 1 was a big surprise for me. I think it's just the format really suited me, and I was pleasantly surprised that there was you had to be performant both in pace and in consistency, and that's something that I feel like every competition is either one or the other, and this one feels like it hits both pieces of that, both in the seeding and in the actual league play itself. So yeah, I think came as a big surprise, but now I'm happy that it worked out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that surprise sort of continued as we went into the league phase. But coming out of seeding, did that sort of maybe shift what your expectations might be and what your actually end goal for the competition was?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think before, it was, since it was just making it to Div 2, I had a little bit less confidence in the amount of time I'd invest in the competition, but I really started to hammer down on it. And once I was in Div 1, I was like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm an actual Div 1 player and that I can try to defend my spot. And if not getting playoffs, at the very least, just keep playing Div 1 and get better in this position that I'm in.
Well, you're going to be trying to keep playing Div 1 not only this season, but next season, because you've got the chance to stay in Div 1. Obviously, not going to be an easy task at all, but looking at the league phase of the past 3 weekends, where you've had those five matches against some of the best players really in the game, how would you summarize your performance in that stage?
I think, my confidence was raised a lot after the first week. After beating, I think it was Wizzy and Elcon, and only losing out to Stost. I think that gave me a lot more of a reason to full try hard and go as hard as I could in this league. I think Playday 2 was kind of like it went the way that I would have expected it initially going into this phase. But I felt like in both those matches I was so close to doing what my potential was, and then I missed it a little bit. But I think that just comes down to just having a better mental when it starts to get into like the mid and late match stage, and that's something I'm still trying to work on. And then the final Playday I think was more. I personally didn't have as much time to train during that week, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go into it and see what happens. And I think that really reminded me, especially on maps like Maharaga and Arrogate, where I feel like those are the more difficult ones to do consistently. Yeah. Like I could really feel myself having lost some of the skill that I had in the previous matches on those maps, especially with Maharaga not being played, I think, either of the 2 weeks prior for me. So I think overall it just kind of started off really strong and then slowly faded out a little bit, which was the opposite of some of the other players like Paco, and I think Richie as well, who really started to step up in the later matches.
Yeah, I think a great example of that is Tween. I think his first match was kind of surprising to a lot of people, and a lot of people probably then were thinking, oh, he's actually not practicing for this. But I spoke to him just yesterday after recording an interview, and he was saying that his plan coming into it was to build up his practice towards the end of the season, because it is kind of a long commitment, a long effort, and to get better as it goes. And yeah, it's been interesting to see how each player adapts to that. But one thing that was particularly interesting from your point of view, and I know you reached out to me about this at the start of the league phase, was you discovered some of the alternative lines that have now become sort of commonplace in matches. A lot of viewers will know the bug slide that is now done on Arrogate, and also the inside line on the checkpoint drift on Reshiram, Mephisto's map. And yeah, when you reached out to me, that was the first I'd heard of them. Some of the testers had tried these but hadn't optimized them, didn't think they might be viable for rounds, but you definitely proved them wrong. And I just wanted to know, is that something that is a habit for you at competitions and competitive maps, that you kind of try and find these different lines, different ways of going around it?
Yeah, I think for me, it always starts with trying to find out what the most consistent way of going about a map is. But then I always do usually try to find is there another line, because you can get it's very easy to fall into this pattern of thinking that the way you're doing something or the way that you've always done a line on every other map is still going to be the fastest way on this map. And I think going into the mindset that these maps are very different and they're very interesting, and seeing these strategies that I've thought of before but have never really been useful on any other competitive maps, I was like, okay, I want to try them, and even if they're breaking even, I want to use them on the first match day at least, just to show that there is a different way to do this. And I was definitely surprised that nobody else was going into the first week using them, and then it slowly got adopted, the bug slide line and the inside checkpoint line. So yeah,
and it's not only Division 1, obviously. Division 1 then kind of adapted that going into week 2. It took Division 2 a little bit longer, and then we saw most of the players actually going for those lines in the final week. And yeah, it was kind of generally across the league, not only myself being on the broadcast, but hearing some of your performances and then these things all around it. It was almost like a whisper it quietly, but Nixotica is doing pretty well, sort of thing. But obviously at the end of the league phase, you finished in 12th position. You're in that Promo-Relegation now. From your Twitter post after that, I kind of got the sense that you were slightly disappointed, but nonetheless very motivated going into these matches.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm motivated mostly just because I really like this league a lot. So it's it doesn't feel like a burden to train for it, like some other competitions might have felt like at times. And I think it gives a good platform for being able to have high level competition. So I mean, the only way to do that is by being trained and feeling like you belong there, and that every match you go into, you have a chance at playing well, at least, if not winning. So I think personally, that's just the mentality I'm going into this one with.
Do you think that's going to be the case for everyone that you're going to be coming up against? Obviously, some of the people towards the bottom of Div 1 might be disappointed and feeling a little bit off after the league phase, whereas some of the guys coming up from Div 2 might be extremely motivated and they've got really nothing to lose going into this. So how do you gauge how your opponents are going to be going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think like it's really difficult. You know, I went back and watched some of the Div 2 matches, and then watched just the later performances in
Hmm.
the Div 1 matches to kind of understand my opponents. And I think, you know, having played Paco in my last play day, I know that he's going to come into the match trained.
Hmm.
I think there's no doubt about that. And same thing with the Div 2 players, Noisa and Dark. Like they're not going to show up untrained. They fought so hard just to get to this spot. They're going to put their all into it. So it's definitely going to be a difficult match. And then, you know, let's say I make it to the final, that I could be seeing, you know, players like Richie or Scarper for Jaka or even Beta Toast, and you know, whoever gets there is definitely fully trained. So I think it's the motivation to win this is going to be high from all sides, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes these matches so exciting, is that realistically everybody who's in here has either a chance or an outside chance of making it into that top two and make it into Division 1 for next season. Obviously, your first match going into it, you mentioned Paco and you've got Noja and Dark in that one. How are you feeling about that match and those three players specifically?
Yeah, I think Paco, you know, I feel like I could have, you know, beaten him in my playdate if I just performed a little bit better. Um, and I think it's going to take a lot of work to beat him now. I think he's one of those players where just the more he sees the maps, the faster he's going to get. Like he's a really fast up and comer, so it's like I need to do whatever it takes to keep up with his pace. As far as Noisa and Dark, you know, I think even if their pace is a little bit slower, they're obviously consistent players. They're very fast. I've played Noisa in NCSA tournaments, and I know just how difficult it can be to beat him on a good day. So I think it's you know, I'm confident that I can do well, but I'm not going to go into it and say that I'm definitely going to be winning this match.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point of these matches at that high level that you were mentioning, and you mentioned it about the end, when it comes to the end of the matches and how your performance might tail off towards the end of that, and sort of your mental game in these high level matches is just as important really as your pace and consistency and just about staying in those matches. One thing that's super interesting to me just as the organizer of the event is seeing in this match, you know, an American player, a Hungarian and Argentinian player and a French player. It's just the perfect definition of what the Beacon World League is, you know, it highlights that brilliantly. But going into this final weekend, anything you're going to be changing in your practice habits or your routine? Obviously you said you didn't have much time in the final league phase week. Anything you're going to be doing different, just piling on more hours, or what's going to be the case?
Yeah, I think, you know, I noticed a lot of difference in lines or just places I was losing time on certain maps. I started to lose a lot of confidence on Arrogate, actually banning it, I think, in my last match when I had the opportunity, because I realized, you know, now that everyone's using the bug slide line, I'm falling quite behind, which means I'm doing something wrong everywhere else in the map. So you know, I definitely need to focus on that, and you know, I think I was putting too much promise on like Heartleap and Xenogen, which were my more comfortable maps, and I need to go back and really focus on like the more difficult maps for me, which is always hard to do, but it's what you have to do when you're training. So that's my focus for this week going into the match.
And I guess the final little interesting one, just wanted to get your opinion on the maps and how you feel about this 5-map pack. It has, you know, it's varied in opinions from players to viewers and organizers, I guess. But how is your overall sense of this map pack?
I mean, this map pack is like, it's very, very varied. I would say, like, you know, I was talking about it on my stream yesterday that I feel like, you know, some of these maps are like really high level. They feel like traditional mixed competitive maps in a way. I think like Heartleap and Xenogen really feel like that, even if they have a little bit of, you know, interesting changes to them from what's traditional. I think maps like Reshiram feel, even if there's a lot of plastic, it feels like a tech map almost. And I think the only way I can classify is like Arrogate feels like a really good Ceriter map that's decorated really well, because I think it only has one normal turn on it, and the rest is just like some crazy. It's just such a variety of different like skills that you have to learn. And I think same thing with Maharaga. It feels like, you know, a map where you're trying to survive it, and I think that's what it was going into the map. Towards the beginning of the season. Now I feel like people are surviving it, and now they're just going really fast. So it's changed throughout the entire season how people perceive it, I think, at this point. So overall, I think it's really good just how much variety there is, and it feels like there's always something that can be brought to the table by different play styles on each one of these maps.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. And I, as a viewer and somebody who's going to be on the broadcast, I'm just as excited to see everything unfold this weekend. It's the last weekend. It's the final fireworks that we're going to be seeing off the Beacon World League until we see an eventual Season 3. And hopefully, for your sake, you could be a part of Division 1 in that sense. So thank you very much for joining me. Anything you want to add, anything you want to say to the viewers before I let you go?
No, I think just make sure you tune in to the finals and the Promo-Rel. I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch, both of them.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Well, Nixotica, thank you so much for joining me again. And we wish you all the very best of luck this weekend.